Welcome back to Musicians in Common Time, where we talk with musicians living in common with our time. Today's guest is Laura Isabella. Laura Isabella soprano feels equally at home on the operatic and musical theater stages. Miss Isabella has sung with the New York City chapter of Opera on Tap, bringing joy to listeners far and wide throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Miss Isabella has portrayed fascinating and complex characters such as Blanche de la Force in Poulenc's Dialogue de Camélie with Westminster Opera Theatre, and the title role in Lucia di Lammermoor through the Martina Arroyo Foundation under the tutelage of Ms. Martina Arroyo and Maestro Stephen Crawford. She has also had the privilege of singing with the New York Dramatic Voices, where she worked with Anthony Latiora and Maestro Matthew Lebeau. Additional highlights include a fellowship with the Cooperative and work with the WCC Opera Workshop, Opera Theatre of Montclair, Finger Lakes Opera, Rochester Lyric Opera, the Rochester Oratorio Society, and the Off Monroe Players, to name a few. In 2021, Ms. Isabella established the Redivivus Opera, a hybrid platform for artists to showcase their talents and hone their craft in a safe and encouraging space, something we all need more of right now. Ms. Isabella holds a Master's of Music in Vocal Performance and Pedagogy with distinction from Westminster Choir College, and a Bachelor of Music in Vocal Performance from Nazareth College. In addition to these degrees, Ms. Isabella holds a Certificate of Leadership from the Eastman Leadership Academy at the Eastman School of Music. Welcome, Laura Isabella. Yay, and welcome to the second episode of Musicians in Common Time, where we talk about extraordinary musicians living in common. One such example is Laura Isabella, and Laura, I am so excited to have you here. Yay!
Hi, thank you, Lauren.
So, I first would like to start off by asking you, what feeds your wallet and what feeds your musician's soul?
Feeds my wallet. Well, I primarily make my living as a voice and piano teacher, but I do love teaching. I'm actually a third generation teacher. My mother is a teacher and my grandfather also. Pretty cool. And I think that also feeds my soul too. My musical soul and just my general essence in general. Kids are wild. They say the craziest things. They do the craziest things. And, I have to say, they've been pretty resilient, but they are tired throughout this pandemic. And it's been really a privilege to see many of them I've been working with for at least 3 years now grow and change and become people, real people. So that's pretty cool. What feeds my musical soul? I just like the idea of coming together and collaborating with many different people and exchanging ideas, whether that's in the rehearsal room or that is maybe perhaps with a talk back with an audience or in a lecture. I really appreciate that. So
awesome. It's kind of interesting how teaching is, in a way, a part of both of those aspects for you, in that teaching at the end of the day is just sharing knowledge, sharing concepts, emotions sometimes, and practices, etc. And I love how you talk about how at the end of the day, musicianship is just collaboration. And I would love for you to speak more on what it means to collaborate and what are your favorite ways to collaborate in a musical setting?
I really love programming recitals. Right before the pandemic, so in September 2019 and January 2020, I was able to do a couple of recitals at one of the assisted living facilities in Princeton, New Jersey. And I got to work with one of my very good friends from Westminster, Gregory Stout, who's a phenomenal collaborative pianist and all-around human being. So that was great. And I also got to collaborate with two good friends of mine, Katie Elliott, who is a great mezzo, and then Sam Burdick, who's also a great soprano. And that was fun. And we have planned on continuing that series, but alas, pandemic. I think that's going to be the main theme for this. Maybe we can get a little graphic that says
Boop,
pandemic.
I'll be sure to have that as like a little pandemic. What was it like programming for assisted living spaces?
It was a fun endeavor and one where that taught me a lot about how to negotiate logistics. A lot of emailing and calls, many of which were not returned, from various facilities in the area. There's a lot on people's plates. And I had initially took it personal, like, oh, okay, I guess you don't want to work with me. Oops, I guess I'm terrible. Self-doubt and whatnot.
Oh, yes.
I initially wanted to look at songs from the American Songbook and some, British and Canadian music. So music from like the 1920s until the 1950s. The first one was called You're the Top. So it had a lot of music by Cole Porter, one of my favorite composers. I think he's my favorite American composer. So I wanted to include music that I thought maybe perhaps the residents listen to and appreciate it, but that's not always the case for sure, because tastes are not homogenous throughout time. And I think we'll see that too if you look back at this 10 years from now. Not everybody was doing TikTok dances.
Very true. Oh, no.
But it's important when you're programming to keep your audience in mind. What do they want to hear? What do they need to hear? And that question, what do they need to hear, is one that can be difficult because you don't want to assume anything about your audience. So, for example, what do they need to hear? So I started at my own opera company March. And it's called Redivivus Opera. And our first endeavor was a fundraiser to raise funds for our neighbors in need through Princeton Mutual Aid. What I had to anticipate, what did our neighbors need to hear? What did the people need to hear? And they need to hear messages of hope. So I had asked my other two singers, again, Katie Elliott and then Rachel Sigmund, who is a soprano in Philadelphia, and outside of Philly, to include music that talked about hope, moving forward, coming together. Not going to sing Brunhilde's immolation scene. That won't work. I mean, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
But not reflective. I don't know if that's what the audience needed. So that's an important consideration. So what do they want to hear? What do they need to hear? And then, of course, what can you say as the performer? How can you be your authentic self? And trying to negotiate those three things is difficult, to say the least.
I guess that is the ultimate charge of a musician, I suppose, especially when in regards to planning. And I would love to hear how you would go about collecting. This is the researcher in me coming out, and the masters in music coming out and coming up there. I'm like, how can you collect the data? Oh my goodness. How do you figure out what your audience needs when you're planning, your audience is not in front of you?
Well, that's a good question. For me, when I was programming the initial fundraiser, I wanted it to be an everyman experience, if you will. I wanted people to come, pay what they can, and that was really important. Pay what you can to come outside. We did this outside of the Princeton Amphitheater near the Community Park North, or in Community Park North, I should say. And just come together, listen to some great music outside. You can wear a mask if you feel like you need to, because we're still in the middle of the pandemic and whatnot. And just enjoy some great music, because I don't think that the idea of sitting in your chair in the audience like this is going to work anymore. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have good manners and be considerate of the people around you, but I think it's really absurd and really elitist and classist to expect people to sit still and be calm and listen to the same composers over and over and over and over and over again.
And clap only when you see the asterisks or the page breaks in the program. Right. Oh my goodness. For those of you who are listening who are not in the classical scene necessarily, there's a thing that I learned very quickly at Westminster. We both went to Westminster, Laura and I, and that you have to wait to clap. You cannot clap after every song, and it's very unheard of to make sounds. I was going to say noises, but make clapping noises, cheering on the performers at all during the song, and it's to the point where you have to have a set of songs that usually go to a theme or text or matching poet and such. And then you clap at the end of that, I would say 3 to 8 song set, depending on what.
And they're long sometimes.
And which is horrible if the performers are both killing it or being killed by it. Honestly, because you painstakingly want to cheer them on, give them the motivation and the encouragement, or you are so excited you want to jump out of your seat and clap after each song. And it's very easy to tell it's very othering, I think, to those who are not used to the classical genre of performances. For people who come in, who maybe are parents of students, new students, transfers, freshmen, etc., and they come in and they clap after each song, and then you see the conductor or the performers pause awkwardly. And then there's this ostracizing from other people in the audience and such. So I totally get where you're coming from about that. And what are some things that you would like to incorporate with your opera company in the future for creating, I like to call, a musical experience for the listeners?
Certainly. Right now, the company is in hybrid mode, so very much online, and then slowly moving into in-person, depending on the restrictions that will be lifted or later implemented. We can't unfortunately tell the future, but hopefully later down the line, at least by the winter, early spring, we'll have more in-person opportunities. But in any case, right now, the mission of Redivivus is to foster anyone who works in the opera industry or correlating industries. I'm including musical theater and contemporary music, because now we're encouraged in the opera world to cross over to program musical theater and to sing pop, etc. You know.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of companies, they'll do Sweeney Todd. They'll do some Rodgers and Hammerstein, maybe Sound of Music.
Okay. So the classics.
Right now, I have this session called The Lab, and it's going to be 2 online sessions. I think on two Sunday evenings in August 15th and August 22nd, where people can come in and say, this is what I'm working on for the upcoming audition season or just for my own benefit. And it's like studio class. It's a virtual studio class, and you show up, you do your thing. It's free. So if you want to.
Yes. Okay. Oh gosh. It's been a while since I've sung in front of people. So maybe I need to do that myself. This would be great.
I think that's what people need.
Yeah. I would love to have the links of these in the description and the links to your opera company. This would be incredible for people to check out. So we'll be sure to have those links in the description, all that good stuff, typical YouTuber sayings and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I really think it's, again, incredible what you're working on and what you're doing. I have always been fascinated with the relationships between performing, listening, and the space itself. Cue transforming spaces. And I have always thought that the space plays a special role, and coming out of this pandemic, it does as well. And I talked a little bit in our last podcast episode with Alex about how we can make the space work for singers, but sometimes we're performing in a church where that's not as doable. And I would love to know what kind of spaces do you hope to perform in coming out of the pandemic?
Well, I think one of the things that's going to stay from the pandemic are digital spaces. I think that many companies and individuals have found that digital programming is an excellent way to reach many people at once. So recently we just did a recital called Hope Mess. And it was a collaboration between myself and my very good friend Felix Gerard, who is an incredible composer and pianist based in New York City. We did a couple of his original works and then some music by Cole Porter, Kurt Weill, and Mel Brooks. and in any case, this was just an opportunity to have audiences just log on to YouTube and watch sort of little vignettes of these songs that are loosely tied together. It's meant to be fun and enjoyable. You can sit with your libation of your choice. You can clean your house with that on and whatnot. But my hope is whether you're actively listening or passively listening, with digital content you are somehow engaged. We can't be on all the time, and in the concert hall you have to be on. Unless you're that poor woman next to me in the Kimmel Center who fell asleep during, I think there was the Britain War Requiem. We did that in 2017. He was snoozing away.
On stage?
Yeah, well, you know where they had us sitting in the Kimmel Center?
Oh, yes.
Some audience seats. For those who may not have been to Philly, the Kimmel Center is a beautiful, beautiful place to go hear wonderful music, including music by the Philadelphia Orchestra. And where the choir sits way up above the stage, there's some audience seats. And the soprano sections, I think, hold on, house left, stage right. There we go.
There you go.
And there's some people sitting there, and one woman, she fell asleep. It was a matinee performance, so.
Oh, okay.
Afternoon snoozies.
Hey, sometimes
in any case,
when the nap calls, it calleth, it beckon.
Yeah.
Wow.
I want people to be able to come as they are. I want people to be able to come as they are and do their thing and enjoy it. You don't have to be a great connoisseur or an artistic aficionado to enjoy the arts. I don't think so. You can try to understand it. And I love it when people ask questions, especially my family, my friends and my other loved ones, etc. They say, hey, what is going on here? I'm like, oh, this is a really cool scene where this person and this person, they're having a fight about this person. And he says, hey, man, don't do that. No, I do what I want. And that's a very, very basic synopsis of what's going on with the scene. No.
So you want classical music to be accessible, and you want the performance experience to be accessible. But obviously, in a realistic world, we have people who still believe strongly in the traditions upheld and ideologies of classical music. And how do you go about collaborating with artists who believe more in the, I don't want to say strict, but I would say formal aspect of classical music?
Well, I would say that a lot of those people who are more into formalities, I think they're slowly going away for various reasons. For one, I think a lot of those people who think like that may be a bit older. They have been in the industry for a little longer and they're resistant to change. And that's a common trait. When you have been doing something for so long and it's working, or you think it's working, and somebody comes along and says, hey, why don't we do this, that can be a little bit threatening. That is to say, I don't think that excuses the blatant racism, homophobia, sexism, ageism, and other isms. Oh, ableism.
Yes.
Can't forget ableism.
Of course.
In our industry that are running rampant. And I think one of the blessings in disguises with the pandemic is that a lot of these poor behaviors and this awful way of treating people has come up. Because, hold on, we need to edit that. Hold on, let's go back. it doesn't excuse the racism, ableism, sexism, ageism, homophobia, etc. in the industry. Just because you do things a certain way doesn't mean that you live in a bubble.
Yeah.
You can't program Aida with a bunch of white people on stage. You can't program these pieces. Even cute fun things like the Mikado by Gilbert and Sullivan, operetta, questionable, very questionable.
Yeah.
Things now that didn't age well. You have to be aware of your surroundings. It's situational awareness on the global scale. And the other thing too, I have to say, is if people are resistant to change and to being accessible, you have to remember that this was the pop music of the day.
Yes. One more time. Yes.
Now, perhaps it was the pop music for the upper classes, but you still had people humming tunes of Mozart who never stepped foot in the Burgtheater in Vienna because they were played in, I guess, what you would call like music halls and body shows and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And we have records of that.
Yeah.
We have records of that from scholars like Michael Kelly and what's the Charles Burke? I can't think of his name. I'm sure somebody will make a comment.
Oh, yeah.
It's this person you're thinking of.
And then we'll say, thank you, please, everybody check it out. Yes.
I can't remember.
I mean, there's a reason why we still hum Twinkle Twinkle.
Oh, yeah.
Because who made it popular? By making it super extra fancy?
Mozart.
Yeah. Yes. And not to mention all the lieder as well that we hum to ourselves, lullabies, thanks to Brahms, etc., and a wonderful Raisin Bran commercial as well.
Oh, I love it. Can we link that in the description?
I totally will. No, I will not explain it here. You just need to click the link and trust us. Please. You will not be rickrolled. I may rickroll you in the next podcast, but that's not for this.
I mean, we can rickroll people whenever we like. This is the internet.
If it's a rickroll, is it a Brahms blast?
Oh, I like that Brahms blast, yeah.
That sounds like I'm spamming Brahms. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes, but as you said, classical music is spicy. It was a reflection of time periods. And for example, I'm reading Ned Rorum's New York Diaries. And oh my god, they're spicy. Oh yeah,
they're spicy.
And just unacquainted love, like just David. Yeah, I get it. Like I get it. We've all been there, and just concepts of time that have been the subject of music time and time again. Now, I would like to add that there are songs that are just probably what I would call filler. They are in the genre, but they didn't really do much, and someone had to write something to fill something out and for a program or fill a paycheck, which I get. So you have to keep in mind that not every single piece of classical music, and I think this is a common misunderstanding, is the best thing you'll ever hear in your entire life. Just like any genre, there's always going to be trash songs.
And and everyone is allowed to have their likes and dislikes. And I tell my students that all of the time. You don't have to like this song. You have to maybe figure out why, perhaps, and try to communicate that effectively. And depending on their age, that can be easier for some and not so easy for others. And then, of course, I do remind them that their tastes will change over time.
Oh, yeah.
Significantly. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. 1,000 Miles by Vanessa Carlton is no longer my favorite song.
Well, I have to tell you that Joan Jett's I Love Rock and Roll puts me in a vehement, blind rage.
Yes!
And I respect Joan Jett because she's a powerful rock and roller who's timeless and incredible. But I guess maybe it's the chanting aspect or the fact that it's everywhere.
Yes.
That signals to me.
Yes.
In any case,
yes.
It's a great song.
Yes, absolutely.
Not my cup of tea.
My I Love Rock and Roll is Don't Stop Believin'.
Yeah.
I love it so much. But if I hear it one more time, I'm gonna stop believing.
And there's some great Journey songs.
Yes!
That's
So
great.
good. Someday love will find you.
I don't understand why that's not more popular.
That's like, yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. So, classical music is approachable. It can be fun. We want to make it fun, and we are discovering ways we can find the balance between musicians of all different opinions, other artists of all different opinions, because sometimes we collaborate with different artists of other disciplines and mediums, and also audience members. And have you collaborated with artists of other mediums? I would love to hear about that experience as well.
Oh, I have done, some musical theater in my time, and lots of operetta. I did a lot of Gilbert and Sullivan operetta. That's not too far away from the opera world or anything. But I grew up with parents who were very musical. I was blessed in that regard. And my father is a drummer. He's a self-taught drummer, primarily drum set, but he plays a ton of different accessory percussion instruments, including mallets, and he can do the double mallets too, which is pretty nifty.
Oh, that's awesome.
Hard. But so I grew up with my dad being like, come downstairs, we're going to jam. And he would put on a song and I'd have to like sing along, and he would play. But we listened to everything in that house. So at the time growing up, I was a bit resistant to maybe listening to doo-wop from the 1950s, going down our 1990 Dodge Plymouth Voyager with the maroon seats and the wood paneling, and going to school, and then everyone's listening to Shaggy and what else was popular in the early 2000s? I don't know.
Usher,
yeah. And I'm trying to go to school and try to fit in, but here I am. Yesterday was doo-wop, today it's polka music, and then tomorrow it'll probably be like bachata and merengues. But
yes,
I'm grateful for that.
That's awesome.
Because a lot of people don't really listen to things outside of their comfort levels, and I just think, especially now that's with the algorithms dictated by like Spotify and Pandora and YouTube Music and Apple Music, you're put in this box and they tell you what to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
I realize this is deviating away from the initial conversation.
Please.
But that's the closest I've been, and I would love to have the opportunity to work with other musicians from other genres. That'd be pretty cool.
That'd be so cool.
We'll see. So, hello.
Ring. Yes, this is a personal invitation for musicians outside of the classical world to hit up Lara and collaborate. Yes, if that is true.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would, to be honest with you, I am a bit of a metalhead, and I see a lot of correlations between metal and opera, very dramatic and very angsty. If we're looking at German opera music and then German power metal and death metal, the subject matter is very much the same in a lot of places, based on the same myths and everything. So that'd be pretty cool to have like a metal opera. And there is symphonic opera metal out there.
That's cool.
So when I was in high school, I listened to a lot of Nightwish. I'm dating myself for sure. But it was cool because the lead singer, she was a classically trained soprano. And it was a really cool thing to hear her soar above, the power chords, if you will, and all that. It was very, very different. So I would love the opportunity to do that.
Oh, that would be so cool.
Something similar.
So Nightwish, yes. What are some, if we're getting into metal, and especially female powerhouse singers, where else can we go to find these gems?
Oh boy. Well, there's one of my favorites is Arcona, and they're a Russian pagan metal band, and their lead singer Masha is female. She's a female fronting metal singer, and she does the death growls and everything, and she can hold her own. against the gentlemen.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty cool.
That's so awesome.
So I recommend Arcona. There's no front women or any women in the band, but I like Blind Guardian. I like Halloween. Their new album's pretty awesome. They just dropped a new album.
I'll have to take a
June.
listen. Oh, no, really?
Yeah, late June, I think.
Okay.
It's very good. Not a lot of ladies in metal. There should be more. So
yeah, I agree. But thank you. This is a great place to start, for me at least. And I hope if you listeners end up listening to any of these example bands, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear it. And I know you, Laura, you would love to just fangirl. Just constantly throw it back to angsty Walkman days. Wait, were you Walkman?
I didn't have like a Walkman. I had just a little portable CD player, and then iPods became really big. Maybe my senior year. So that was like 2005, 2006.
You're making me feel like a baby. I remember I was in elementary school and iPods were becoming a thing. And I was like late to the game because my parents were like, that is so much money for what? When you had all these CDs anyway. When you had all the, so it was very interesting to have that trend. And I remember the iTouch came out and that everybody was like, what is this? What is this? And I remember having the iTouch and I think it was like a really chunky like case for it that you could get at the mall, at the kiosks. Oh yeah. Yes. And it like snapped into place at the front and the back. And that was before like OtterBox became a thing and all of these cases or yes. Oh my gosh, what a throwback. But
oh yeah. When we would all go out, we would have our phones, which were more likely flip phones or the slidey phones. Smartphones weren't really a thing until later when I was in college. And then your digital camera, and then your iPad. And if you were really lucky, you could put it in the tape deck in your friend's car. It's crazy.
Yes,
it's really wild.
Absolutely.
Wild time.
Yes. Oh, how do you think?
A big purse.
Yes, you did. And then the best part was it was a big purse with lots of small pockets inside. Or
that made no sense. You couldn't fit anything in there.
Yes, because like the technology was changing every year, so that it, like wouldn't. Oh my gosh! Or like the small wristlets. You would have the small wristlets, one for like each thing to protect each.
Mm-hmm. All the Coach wristlets that my aunts would get me from the outlets like in Massachusetts or the ones in Monroe, New York.
Yeah.
I went to the outlet. I got you something for your birthday. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It was appreciated. They're pretty cool. I still have a couple of them.
Dude, they probably would go for so much money. What do they fit? A tissue nowadays.
Maybe this very small jade plant, I think.
Oh, perfect.
It's so cute.
Oh, it's so cute. Oh my goodness. Yes, I am all about the small plants. In regards to all this technology, all these technological changes, how do you think these technologies affected the classical music? Because we obviously know the literature and we know clearly by how everybody lives their daily lives how these devices affected mainstream music. But what do you think is there an effect on classical music as a result of this, and what is it?
I think it's a couple things. For one, I think it's become a tool of accountability in the sense that you can't just tweet something into the universe that's blatantly one of the isms: racist, sexist, classist, ageist, ableist, homophobic, a couple icks in there too. You can't do that without consequences. And also, when I was in school, like primarily in undergrad, you were expected to not post things that were considered unsavory or crude, like pics of your night out with your friends, because employers could use that against you. And now, with having been in graduate school a couple of years ago, you don't say anything that could alienate anyone, like your political beliefs, because that could potentially alienate donors and patrons of the companies you work for. Because more often than not, they're polar opposites. Not always the case. So I think the technology has become a tool of accountability, but also a way for people to come together in times of adversity. For example, there are people who have used technology to denounce abuse they were experiencing by various people in power. Also saying, hey, what's this voice teacher like, or this coach or pianist? And then after doing some research, you learn to maybe perhaps either stay away from that person or seek them out for whatever service you need from them. I also think that it's a great way, going off of that, a great way to network. There are a lot of different communities of singers and pianists and composers and people in other parts of the operatic industry. We can't forget our stage managers, our stage hands, our costumers, our wig designers, our makeup artists, our producers, front of house people, marketing, etc. Though I consider all those people operatic professionals, the people who literally put the show up.
Yeah. Yes.
They don't get a lot of thanks. We don't necessarily consider them in our work as singers. But in any case, I digress. We can come together and we can talk about our experiences, and we can also seek each other out. Like, hey, I'm going to be at R.I.P. Shetler Studios on such and such a date. Anybody want to grab coffee afterwards? I'm being heard at 1:00, yada, yada, yada. Or if you have an unfortunate experience, like forgetting something, does anyone have an extra copy of, I don't know, Pamina's aria? Somebody inevitably in that line does. And then you can run to the Staples and make a quick copy for your pianist and all that. So there's a sense of camaraderie and helping each other out on many different digital platforms. And I think one of the things that opera singers are using right now is TikTok.
Really?
There's some really awesome TikTokers out there who are engaging with audiences outside of their own circle.
That's
They're taking the time to be transparent and be present with people who have never heard opera in their lives. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's so great. My particular favorite is the Wopera.
Oh, yeah.
You know exactly. Another link that will be in the description. Another link that'll be in the description. Yes. But this is not for kids. Just as a warning, this is not appropriate. This is the Megan Thee Stallion's WAP, but operatic, set to, arranged and sung by operatic professionals in the classical industry. It was so great. And it was just stitched so many times, and I love that so much. And the layering, perfect.
Into the thick of it.
Into the thick of it.
That a couple months ago.
Yes. Yes. I want to know, how often do you find and or get programmed for jobs through social media, and what are primary social medias that happen with that?
Well, I don't know if I would consider it social media, but we have some digital platforms we use, like Yap Tracker. A lot of companies will post jobs on Yap Tracker, and now more seasons will hopefully happen in the fall and the spring, summer, etc. Going forward, you're going to see more and more postings. It's a subscription service, though you don't always have to be a member to apply for certain jobs. You can see things on Classical Singer on their forums. It's not really like social media, but you can see people post on various Facebook pages, say, hey, has anyone heard from Sarasota Opera or Opera Saratoga? And you can say, oh, I got an email a day ago that said we're going to put first offers out, etc. So in a way, the social media is more like, have you heard about this? Or asking for clarification without necessarily going to the top, because more often than not, sometimes those emails and calls will go unanswered. They may not want you to bug them. If you think about it, they're going to get hundreds and hundreds of applications.
Makes sense.
One competition I applied for was totally digital this past year, because it had to be. And they got, I think like 500 applications, and about 2/3 of those were sopranos.
Oh my gosh.
Something like that. Yeah, something crazy. But in any case, so yacht tracker, classical singer. Sometimes you'll see postings if you follow a company on their social media, like most Instagram, Facebook, sometimes TikTok. They're starting to get a little savvy with that. Like I saw Glimmer Glass Festival has a TikTok now. I think there's a couple others. They'll post things and say, we're looking for this, here's the requirements, submit your materials this way, etc. And also in opera news, Opera America, you'll see things. NATS, National Association of Teachers of Singing, you may see some stuff, especially for young people, like in high school and a little bit younger. You'll see more opportunities for them in that.
That's good to know for a lot of us teachers who may be listening, and for us youth who are listening. This is a good resource to follow. Thank you so much for these resources. Do you have time for quick questions?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Ready? You are at the edge of a cliff and you are on a stage, and you are told everybody's going to fall off the cliff unless you perform this role in any opera at all. What's the one that you can pull out of your back pocket and be like, I got this? Hold the phone.
We're all doomed.
Tell me about that. Well, that's very indicative of your rehearsal process and your preparation process. So tell me about that.
It takes a long time. I don't think people really realize how much time it takes to get a roll into your whole instrument. It doesn't just happen here in your throat. It's your whole body. And for me, I had always considered myself a fast learner. But I don't think that's the case anymore. And I don't think it was always the case with school and all that. You are expected to have this memorized by this date and ready to go, and then you move on to the next project, or you're juggling multiple projects at once. When I was in graduate school, we did dialogues with the Carmelites, and I learned Blanche in maybe less than a month.
Wow.
Because I had to. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend learning a full role that is very emotionally, physically, spiritually taxing, and then on top of that have other obligations like jobs and other academic obligations and everything else.
Not to mention making food and doing laundry.
Yes, living.
Living, just period. Living, period. Yep.
And that's the thing. In the old days, you would go to your teacher's house, you would live with them for a couple of years, and for at least 1 to 2 years, you would exclusively work on exercises, on vocalises. We don't do that anymore. So you are expected to have a good technique almost before you even start school.
Wow.
How do you... You're expected to have had lessons before, but as you all know, lessons are expensive.
Yeah.
It's not an option. I know many people whose choir teachers help them prepare for their undergraduate auditions, if at all, right?
Yes.
And
that's me raising my hand. Thank you. Shout out to Nicole Renna and Rob DeLauro. Thank you.
Yeah. And then you're thrown in and expected to be able to sing well and juggle many different obligations as a 17, 18-year-old. And then you continue that. You graduate at 21, 22, maybe 23. And then you're expected to immediately go to your master's. So by the time you finish your master's, you're somewhere between 24, 25, maybe 26. and then what?
Right.
And you're trying to juggle real life on top of that. You can't be expected, I think, to really give yourself to a role unless you have the time and the space. And also, I think the maturity. Being in my 30s, which is considered ancient in the opera world. Ooh, look out.
Even though people are living an entire century now, it's fine.
Oh, gosh. And that's the thing, too. I wanted to talk just very briefly about the ages.
Of course.
And after 28, you're old hat, especially as a female identifying singer. Oh, yeah.
So let me get this straight. You graduate 24 through 26 from graduate school, and then you're undesirably old.
Well, I don't know about that.
Oh, okay. You're not considered for certain roles starting the age of 28. Is that it with that?
I think so. That's a very old way of thinking. I don't think it's as common anymore, because now things have significantly changed because of the pandemic. I think people are starting to get a bit of a reality check with that. But if you look at also the trend for opera is, and this was happening before the pandemic, very visual. They want to see people who almost look like movie stars performing roles. They want to see people who can sing beautifully and then just look fantastic in general. And honestly, if the voice is there, I don't care what you look like. That's the most important thing. Is the voice beautiful? Is this person being authentic? And are they also a good collaborator? Those are the most important things. I don't care what they look like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be taller than the tenor no matter what. 9 times out of 10. I'm 5'9". It's just, it is what it is. I can't help it. Okay?
I get it. I totally get it.
I come from giant people, in Ireland. I'm so sorry. It's just the way it is.
Forget leprechauns. You come from giants.
No, lassie. No, that's terrible. Awful. I hope I didn't offend the people of Ireland with that.
Yes. So tell me of a role. Let's change that then to, because obviously you are so immersive in your process that you can't hold on to that forever. That role forever and remember that role forever from every detail, because it's so contextual for you based on how much of yourself, your present self you bring. Your future self can't carry that with you. I understand that. So let's rephrase the question as to a role that in your heart and soul you would be able to just put everything into.
I would say right now, it's so basic, but Violetta, that's what I'm currently studying right now, in the main character in La Traviata. It's starting to really fit, and I think that, given some time, it could be quite a fun character to portray, for sure.
Great.
I think people would like that. And I could do that justice.
Yes, that's so great. I can't wait to hear it. I would love that so much.
Hey.
Congratulations on everything going on for
Thank you.
I'm really, really excited for you. I know this is so difficult to pull ourselves out of. I'm feeling that difficulty myself, and I'm feeling empathetically everyone else's difficulties surrounding me, and this is part of one of the reasons why, one of the many that I wanted to start this podcast, where I can commune with musicians and by really listening, and I really appreciate it. What's going on for you, for professionally, personally? What are you looking forward to?
What am I looking forward to? Well, my students at one of the studios I teach at, they're going to have a little virtual recital. That's closed, by the way. I'm sorry. It's not open to the public. It's just for the students and their families, but I'm excited. We had one in May, and they did very well. Yay! And I cried. It's fine.
That's so
proud
cute.
mama hen. So I'm looking forward to hearing them play and sing. What else am I looking forward to?
Your little jade plant boy growing.
Oh yeah, yes. I don't think this one has a name, but I have a little palm plant I named Lord Palmerston. It's on the porch right now.
I love that so much. That's so great. Well,
But
thank you so much
just
for
life in general.
Yay, life in general. Hope. Hope, please. Oh, that's so great. Well, best of luck to your students and best of luck to you. Thank you so much.
Lauren.
I really appreciate you doing this podcast. It means the world to me.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Wow, what an incredible, insightful, and laugh-inducing conversation we had. It felt like forever, and it also felt like yesterday. Mostly because it was forever, because I take forever. And I'm sorry, but I'm also at a point right now where I am sitting on the floor, no couch, anywhere in this apartment, and starting the next part of my life. So, here's to documenting that next part of the journey as we dive into the host musician living in this common time, myself, for the next episode, which is gonna come out whenever I feel like it. And hopefully I'll have a couch by then. Wish me luck. Have a great week, everyone.